we had so much to cover when we talked yesterday that we kind of rescheduled another call. We were halfway through new ideas on creating clients, so why don't we jump straight back in there?
Yeah, and maybe it's a good place to start. Emma, you and I were talking before we started recording about how I would answer this question if I was sitting down with someone, because I've got a ton of ideas. And as you rightly pointed out, that for me, there was a big turning point when I did an exercise, which was to look at where my last 10 clients came from. And I realized in the conversation we had before we started recording that any of the questions you're asking me, I can give a general answer. But if I was sitting down with someone, if I was coaching someone, it would be very, very different. I would normally ask a number of questions back to get some more context before I answered it. So in terms of, new ideas to get clients, it kind of depends, really. I can give, and I'm happy to give a bunch of different ideas, but it really depends on who you are, how much experience you've got, what kind of clients you want to work with, all of these things. So maybe it'd be cool, and we talked about this, and if people have got pen and paper handy, you might want to go down and write some of these things down. But I really encourage people to take some time and think about some of the questions I'm going to ask you. It's still not the same as a coaching conversation because I can't hear you back. But even in just answering these questions for yourself, it can be helpful and help you see what's the way forward. It can maybe bring out something for yourself. So the first question is, as I've talked about, before, where did your last 10 clients come from? If you haven't had 10 clients, where did your last X number of clients come from? If you've been coaching for a while and you have had clients, it's useful to see where are they coming from? Because when I did that, I was kind of putting my effort into a lot of different places. But when I answered this question, I realized, they're all coming from this one community. They're all coming from this one place. And then it started making a lot more sense for me to put a lot more time and focus and energy there, because the kind of return would be greater than me just kind of sporadically trying to put my effort everywhere. So that's the first question. Where did your last 10 or X number of clients come from?
I was just going to say, you said before, it might be a good idea if people want to do it right now to hit pause and go and do that.
Yeah, so actually do this. Don't just listen and go, yeah, I'll do it later. Hit pause. We'll wait. Yeah.
Actually, Ankush, before we move on to the next one, I might be labouring something that's quite obvious here, but the reason stuff like this is valuable is that all the ideas that you're going to give everybody for creating clients, it's all really, really useful information. It's all stuff that then we can use, coaches can use to inform their own process. But that's the only way it can work. It's not like there's a template to follow or anything like that. Whatever works for you is going to be whatever works for you and kind of comes from your ideas and your insight and your action, and then the learnings and feedback and insight you get from that. And it's kind of a process. So all the information is incredibly useful, but it's useful to inform what you're creating rather than to kind of tell you what to do, which is why the coaching and kind of reflecting part of the process is really useful.
Yeah, I think it's Steve Chandler that first introduced me to the distinction of information versus transformation. And I think that's so relevant for us as coaches, because I can give a ton of information here, and there are a load of videos on YouTube. There are a load of groups available. There's so much information out there. There are a load of books that are out there around being a better coach, how to create clients, sales books. There's a lot of information, but there is a difference between knowing information or listening to this webinar and going, okay, that's interesting, and transformation. And I know that someone who listens to this and actually goes and applies one thing is going to have more of an impact in their life than someone that listens to the whole thing 5 times but doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So we won't labour that point anymore. So the first question was, where do your previous clients come from? The second question, which I was asked by another coach some time ago, is he said, if I might know a great client for you, they might be the perfect client for you, because I might want to give you a referral. So what kind of client would you want me to refer you? What kind of client would you want me to refer to you? And it's kind of, a different way to ask this question is, who is your ideal client? Now, up until that point, I didn't have an answer. I was like, someone with money, someone who wants to work with me. But, I work with a lot of different people, but what I've come to see is that there are a couple of groups of people that I really like to work with. Now, I work with people outside that and I enjoy that, and who my ideal client is has and will change. But it's just useful to know who are the kind of people that you want to work with. So again, in the context of new ideas for creating clients, it's first really useful to know what kind of clients would you want to create. So for someone, it might be, well, I would love to go in and deliver a public sector type of coaching experience for recovering drug addicts. Now, for someone else, that could be completely a nightmare client. On the flip side, someone might say, well, I really want to work with CEOs and their exec teams. And for one coach, that would be great. And for another coach, that would be like, oh my God, I couldn't think of anything worse. So I wouldn't want to work there. Again, some people want to work in business and prefer that kind of coaching. Some people prefer to work one-on-one with private clients. It's useful to know what your preference is.
A kind of distinction I would like to make, it isn't necessarily about what's my niche. We're not talking about branding yourself in a particular way. It's kind of about making it not about you at all. It's about getting clear on who are the people that you would really love to serve, and turning it from something very general, which can leave you quite stuck as to what to do next, into getting focused on groups or individuals and what they're actually up against, what their needs are, what it is that would make the biggest difference in their lives right now.
Yeah, and this doesn't exclude you from working with other people. It's kind of an interesting thing that I realized that one of the groups that I work with is men who have come through the self-development world. Men who have done some kind of self-development, self-improvement. They've read the books, they maybe gone on some training courses, and they might not even be looking for anything, but they've got this desire for excellence in their life. They're into being the best they can be. So when I kind of realized, well, those are the kind of people I really like to work with, I started putting my time and attention in that way and started getting more clients from that community. And then I created my immersion events that I do and my groups and all sorts of other things. Or if I had things already, they kind of evolved. Now, what's really interesting is, since I was scared to do that, because I thought, if I do that, then I'm going to have no women work with me. But what's really interesting is I've had women work with me, and only just yesterday someone asked me, could I do an event like I do for men for women? So being clear on who it is that you want to work with, we think, or I used to think certainly, that it's going to limit me and pigeonhole me, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't. It can open up more possibilities for us. So again, I'm not going to labor the point, but I really want to make this practical. So if you're listening to this, hit pause, get out a piece of paper, get a pen, and take some time on this. You don't need to just rush it and come up with the first thing that comes to mind. Really sit down and have a think about who your ideal client is, who your ideal type of client is. There might not be someone who's there immediately accessible. If you thought of a Premier League footballer, maybe that's not something that you can do right now. However, you might be able to go and start working with a local football team You know, you might have ways of becoming more visible to that group. It might be that it then leads to you thinking, okay, how can I network with other coaches who work in this area? Maybe ask them what they do. You might be able to ask Emma, right, to say, hey, Emma, I want to work with this kind of client. Do you know any coach that works with that kind of client? Can you get them on the next webinar? Can you get them on the next interview? So it starts to open things up for us. So really do this, hit pause, and take some time and have a think about it.
Cool.
Okay, hope you've done that. So that's really helpful and really useful. And the other thing again to think about, for me, a question that I got asked last year was, how many clients means that you're full? And I got asked this question by a young coach, and I kind of resisted it. I was like, well, no, I don't want to put limits on what I do, and I want to kind of be really open and all of this stuff. And he pushed me, and it was really, really helpful, because I realized, okay, when I have X number of clients, then I'm full. Mm. And so it was really useful and helpful, because a lot of coaches, and I include myself, I used to go around thinking I needed to mass market myself. But as a coach, I've got limited capability. I've got limited bandwidth. You know, I can't work with 100 people. Well, I could do, but I choose not to. I don't want to work with 100 people a year or 1,000 people a year. So again, the type, you know, how many people you want to work with will also have an impact on the type of coaching you do. If you're doing online programs, yeah, you know, your price point will probably be lower, and the volume of people you work with will probably be higher. And again, that then impacts the question of, how do I create more clients? Because your strategy or what you do will probably be quite different. What's effective will be different. Now, if on the other hand, you're like, I want to work with 5 or 10 clients a year, and I want to go really deep with them, then again, how you create clients will probably be a bit of a slower process, in terms of you'll take more time up front with people, and you want to get in front of people who are willing to do that. So, you know, it really does depend on what the answers to these questions are. So again, hit pause, take some time, think about how many people you'd really want to work with. What does your ideal practice look like? Because again, that will really have a big impact on you know, the answer to new ideas for creating clients.
Yeah, I remember the first time I actually considered that, and it just made things look an awful lot simpler. When you consider, like, say, do you want kind of 6 or 10 package clients a year, and if so, what does that look like, and what do you need to be earning from those to make a living? Or do you want, or how do you want your income to be made up of? Do you want to be, you know, doing X number of group programs or workshops or clients or whatever? And I couldn't believe when I first considered it that I'd never considered it until that point, but it just made things seem an awful lot simpler.
Yeah, and the answer can change. You know, this is not a static thing. No one's going to hold your feet to the fire. Well, you said in April 2016 that you wanted to have your practice look like this. Well, now your practice is different. This is your business. You get to decide. Yeah. You know, that's the cool thing about being a coach.
It's just that it helps you take specific steps and kind of be more focused, doesn't it? Rather than when you're in that kind of general thing of how do I get more clients, you tend to find, you know, a lot of coaches tend to find that you're not taking as much actual useful specific action, because you can be kind of quite overwhelmed by the whole thing can look kind of intangible and big, and anything you can do to get a bit of clarity helps with taking that next step, even though you're just making it up and you can change your mind tomorrow.
Yeah.
Once you're in the world of making stuff happen, it's just gets easier and easier to keep making it happen, and changing direction's pretty inevitable. I was going to say easy, but inevitable as well. It's part of that process.
So now that people have probably got the answers to those questions, would it be helpful, Emma, for me to maybe talk about some more general ideas, and then people can take from that and what they will, or do you want to?
Definitely. The one thing I just wanted to kind of bring back in at this point, which you would probably cover anyway, is that the point of considering this stuff, like, you know, what's a group of people you'd like to work with, and, you know, what are they up against, like what would be a kind of dream come true result for them or whatever, is because then it lets you consider not necessarily how do I get them, but how could I give value to that group of people, which is something we talked about a lot yesterday in part one of this, wasn't it? And so everything that you suggest now is going to be in the context of giving value to, you know, the people you've identified that you're interested in working with.
Yeah, and I want to add to that as well, Emma. Again, this is some of my, you know, newer learnings, and I'm learning all the time, as all top coaches do, that they really do undertake a lifelong learning process. And one of my most recent learnings was, I don't know what my clients want. I think I know, I have a pretty good idea, but I recently, for example, you know, again, I work a lot with men. I run a group for men, and I thought I knew what they wanted. And then I thought, well, let me just check in, let me do some intake. And so I put a poll out there and said, okay, over the next 12 months, if there's one part of your life that could change, what would that be? And I gave them some answers, and I was really, really surprised that the top answer was career. I would never have guessed that. So I was producing content, I was giving value, and I was serving people, and I was getting good feedback. But when I found out, okay, they really want help in this area, that made it much, much more easy for me to be of more service, to give more value. So I would encourage people that if you want to work with a certain group, if you're already working with a certain group, and this might sound incredibly simple, but don't underestimate the value of just checking in with the kinds of people that you want to work with or are working with around what's really valuable to them. And it's often not what we think it is. I was speaking to a very senior person in a multinational organization the other day, and so I thought we would be talking about business. You know, I thought we'd be talking about the work I do around the principles behind state of mind, and how that fitted into a multinational organization, how that fits into learning and development, how that fits into efficiency and effectiveness, productivity, all that kind of good stuff. And in the end, we didn't talk about that. In the end, we spent a long time talking about personal relationships. And it became very clear that this person wanted to talk about their own journey, their own learning journey, as opposed to, you know, whatever from a business context. So yeah, it's just really worthwhile checking in with what people want. Sorry, you were saying.
I was just going to agree. That's a really good point, and it kind of just illustrates again that the less of our own stuff we go in with, and the more kind of curious and just interested in the other person or people we can be, then the more chance we have of actually getting their world and seeing what it is they really want.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can change. It can change. And, you know, I work with a lot of clients over a long period of time, and what they want when they start working with me can be very different to what they want 6 months or a year later. So it's good to do that check, and it's good to, sometimes people won't tell you what they really want because they don't think you can help them. And once you have helped them, you know, that they might have, you know, some other requirement, they might have some other challenge, and maybe they'll open up to you more. And it might not be you. I refer clients to other coaches sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to have a particular kind of transformation, if they want some particular change in their life, there might be someone else who's better suited. Like we've spoken about before, I've talked about the coaching exchange because I think the work that you guys do here is great, and the ability certainly for new coaches to get an experience of coaching through peer coaching, co-coaching, whatever the latest term is for it, is really, really valuable. And I think that comes back a lot. I find in the work that I do is, this isn't just about me. This is about helping the other person. Now, helping the other person sometimes is making a proposal and saying, let's work together as a paid arrangement. Sometimes serving the other person is, leaving them to it because they're good. Sometimes serving the other person is, referring them on to someone else,
Sure.
either because they're not a good fit for you or just a different coach is a better fit for them. And I think, like we talked a lot about yesterday, we are talking strategy, we are talking ideas, but we're also talking about where you're coming from. And you can really underestimate that, but it's really powerful because we're so used to being sold to that people get a feel for that. So they get a feel for, is this person just trying to sell me something because they want to make money, or is this person genuinely trying to help me?
Yeah, it's it's a really key point, and I don't know if this is kind of too obvious, but as I was listening, it was just reminding me again that the whole thing is about relationship, and it's about trust, and for somebody to trust you and want to work with you, they need to trust that you're able to do what it is they want you to do with them, but also trust in your integrity, where you're coming from, that your intentions towards them are good. And so that's always got to come ahead of kind of sales or money making. And every time you refer a client to somebody that you think will be better placed to serve them, they get to see that you're putting their interests ahead of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. When you come from that place, the ideas tend to pop up.
Yeah, sure.
So I was talking to a client of mine yesterday, and this client is a coach, but he's still working full time. And we talked about, various different things. And he was telling me that a very senior leader in his organization, very, very senior, was coming in to spend some time with him. And part of the reason why he's coming in to spend time with him is because my client's really shifted and has opened up and accessed his own creativity, and is now running a project which is going to save the company like 50 million euros or something. Wow. Ridiculous, right? So obviously he's got the attention of someone very senior. Now, this client of mine wants to be a coach, wants to do this he's got some clients and he wants more, and he wants to do this full time. Now, what I pointed out to him is, because he started telling me that this senior person has got their own troubles, and I won't say what they were, but you can tell is very stressed. Now, my client knows and coaches people around that and can help this senior person be less stressed. So one option that we talked about is, when this guy comes in to see him, is having a book or two or some resources that he can offer, not force, not push, but offer to the senior leader, saying, hey, you've come in to see me because I'm running this project. Part of me coming up with this idea and implementing it has been some work that I've been doing. If I share this with you, would you, if I share this book with you, would you read it? Or if I share this audio would you listen to it? And again, it's coming from a place of service. And the person could say no. The person could say yes and then still not read or listen to what you shared. Or they could, and they might not be interested. Or they might listen or read what you share with them, and they could be like, wow, this is really interesting, I want to know more. And for me, this is really about sowing seeds. You know, as coaches, we're going out in the world and we're helping people, and as we help people, we sow seeds. And this can be anything from doing a video series like you're doing here, and putting out content, through to having conversations with people, through to giving talks. There's so many things you can do that can be helpful. But again, it comes from that place of, how can I serve? How can I be of help? How can I help people with the problems that they've got? Even though they might not think I can help them, even though they might not take me up on it, it's not about you. It's about putting yourself out there and helping others.
Yeah, so true. And you can't begin to guess which seeds will germinate. So that bit's out of your control. Just feel free to sow them and see what happens. And you might want to prioritize, but you don't have to be too precious about it, because you're not going to run out of seeds. So,
right. There's 7 billion people on the planet. I've yet to meet a perfect human being, and so anyone that I meet, I'm not saying I can help them, but I know that I can get curious about them and find out a little bit about them. And I would say a lot of people that I meet, you know, even if you kept it at 50%, right, which I think is conservative, even if only 50% of people you met, you potentially could help them. And if that's all you did, and offered that, you know, offered some kind of value, some kind of service, something to help people, that will result in clients. And, you know, the other thing that we didn't really talk about yesterday, but for me is, and I was reflecting on this yesterday evening, was that just the importance of doing good work. And we can overlook that sometimes, but it's so important. When you do good work, when you actually help people, when you make a real difference in people's lives, that is when you get more clients, through referral, through word of mouth. I did an immersion retreat last week, and one of the guys came to that event for one reason and one reason only. He had seen another person who had come to a few of my retreats and seen the change in that person. And it wasn't about sales, it wasn't about anything. He just said, I saw what happened to that guy, and I want that for myself. And when I work with clients, I really try, and as best I can, to not have client satisfaction, but client, you know, delight, client astonishment, really go over and above what the client's paid for. Not in a way to devalue what I do, but if there are lots of little things that I can do which don't take me a lot of time or effort or money, that can make the client's life a lot easier, or a little bit better, or help them get to where they want to go. And so when I keep that in mind as well, you know, we're moving slightly away from creating new clients, but serving the clients you have already. And, you know, when I work with coaches, one thing sometimes you'll get a new coach, and they've said, you know, I've got 2 clients, this is great, but how do I get my next 7, right? My next 8. And what I help them do is slow down and look at how they can best serve those 2 clients. Because through those 2 clients, potentially you could get a full practice. If you blew the mind of those 2 people, if you really help them shift and really help them change, chances are they would go around and tell other people. Chances are, even if they didn't tell other people, people would notice and ask them, what's come over you, what's shifted, and what's changed for you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, for me, and obviously, if somebody wanted to, they could kind of do more stuff or grow their practice more quickly. But that's how mine worked. Virtually every client I've ever had has been through direct conversation and then referral, or those 2 things really. And it doesn't get you from naught to full in 3 months or 6 months, but it's a pretty solid way of doing it.
it's a long term, for me, it's a long term sustainable strategy.
Mm.
You know, and it might not sound, you know, sexy or like, you know, the 3-step method to filling your practice or anything like that, but it to me, it makes sense. You do good work, you really, really, really help people, like really help people. I'm not just saying just do what you need to do. I mean really help them. And that makes a big difference. And I've seen that. And it's interesting to me that when I have conversations with coaches, and it's happened, and I wasn't always like this, you know, this is something that I've learned and seen deeper and deeper, but especially in the last 6 months or so, I'll get comments from them I've had this from several coaches who have commented after we've had maybe a conversation of, wow, I now really see what you're talking about in terms of service, because I'm modeling it. So I don't hold back. If there's some way that I can help someone, again, this is not about not valuing my time. I'm not going to go and say, sure, I'll give you a 6-month coaching experience at no cost. I'm not going to do that. But there are a number of ways that I can really help people. You know, it might be sending them a book. It might be sending them an audio. It might be connecting them with someone else. It might be helping them hire someone. It might be pointing them to a blog article. It might be pointing them to your group. There's so many things that I can do, that when I really do that, and you know, take 5 minutes out of my day, it really does. It makes me stand out. It really helps the person. It makes it much more likely that that person's going to work with me. And
it's very rewarding, isn't it? I mean, I kind of naturally went that way when I started coaching, but I wasn't charging enough for it to be all that sustainable, because I love being able to, you know, if I just come across something on like a video or a short clip, or I find out something that'd be useful, I like to kind of have my clients somewhere in the back of my mind all the time, so that I notice when something will be useful or interesting to them. Or, you know, in the last conversation we've had, there'll be something like actually practical that they're after, and then I'll come across, you know, a useful resource or whatever. And that to me is part of the pleasure of it, rather than setting aside, you know, 90 minutes or an hour or whatever every fortnight and then not thinking about them between sessions. I like it to be just kind of part of my day-to-day life in a way.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about my clients, and not consciously, but like you say,
not in a weird way.
Yeah, not in a weird way, but in terms of if something comes up, maybe it's the way my mind works. I connect certain things. So if I find something that's helpful to me, I'll always think, is it who else is this helpful to?
Yeah.
Or if quite often I will be having a coaching conversation with one client, and something will come out that's really helpful to them, or I think about a resource for them, and then I'll just think, do you know what? I wonder who else, which other one of my clients, or sometimes even people that aren't clients, would find this useful. And I'll send that to them.